I'm really excited to share with you the first solo podcast on the happiness discipline. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been getting into long form content. I don't want to have a fancy name on it. I've been getting into writing blogs and documenting my discussions and calling them podcasts. I found that these forms of creativity make me happy. I think it's healthy for the brain. I think it helps you complete ideas and thoughts. I think it helps you sit with difficult questions. And I've always had things I want to share. And I think in my early podcast, I talked over my guests a little too much. And now I'm really trying to take all the learnings from the retreats I go to, the breath work I do, my gym sessions, my readings, my coaches, my mentors, my friends, chatting with Emma, whatever, and really share a couple cohesive thoughts around the happiness discipline. If you haven't had a chance to read the blog I put out recently called The Happiness Discipline, I put it out January 16th, and I gave a definition to the happiness discipline. It's the unconditional ability to remain focused on the greater perspective of a situation in real time without having to think about it. That's a mouthful. And I even wrote here, right, that, that was kind of me trying to make it a little fancy. But what it means to me is being able to focus on the bright side of things. And that's what this podcast has always been about. And that's what this solo podcast is about today. I want to dive into the happiness discipline a little bit. It's actually rooted in a thought that is, if you cannot tell the future, you have no right to judge what's going on in your present moment. I'm going to say that again. If you cannot tell the future, you have no right to judge what's happening in the present moment. So an example is if something seemingly bad happens, right? There's a car accident in front of you, you're sitting in traffic and you miss your flight. And it's a flight to hang out with a friend, a bachelor party, whatever. That's not a bad event. That event just is, as the Stoics would say. I hear Tim Ferriss in my mind saying, everything just is. It's not good or bad, and it's up to your interpretation. And everything does have a bright side to it. It really does. It doesn't always have to overtake the negative for you to focus on it. But everything has that bright side. And being disciplined to train your brain on that greater perspective, as I said in the happiness discipline definition, to focus on that and to do that in real time is what it's all about. The beautiful thing is that's a muscle we can build. We can build this just like we could build muscles in the weight room. And just like when we go to the weight room, you need to practice that. Things like, writing down, doing gratitude practice, things that you hear all the time. Really, you could, some people can think they're corny. I think that's not being vulnerable. I think anyone that's doing that, I would just challenge them to do it once and please reach out to me or talk to a close friend about how you feel about it. Or just talk to yourself, reflect on how you feel about it. Actually, I was listening to a podcast today. Man, The Diary of a CEO. I forget the gentleman's name that was on the podcast. He talked about writing down, I feel happy when, and doing this practice as long as you can and sitting with it. Enjoy it. Play some good music, have a cup of tea, some water, whatever. Get cozy and just write that down as much as you can. First of all, the activity itself is amazing. I mean, it's fun to relive these experiences. But it's also something that is a good practice. So it's something that you can reflect on moving forward, right? So try that. I feel happy when blank. And reflect on that so you can start making decisions based on that. Actually, just today, I came back from the gym about 2 hours ago, and Emma did 60 minutes on the treadmill walking, and she was learning about gut health, probiotics. And afterwards, we got in the car and she was lit up talking about what she learned. She wanted to share it with me. She was talking about how she could put it to use. And I started thinking this makes you happy. We need to prioritize learning. And I'm the first one to say, like, I often deprioritize learning. Whether my ego is saying like, oh, that's not cool, or I just don't make the time for it. But like, look how happy it makes her. And when I reflect on it, when I learn something new, oh my God. First of all, the psychological principle, social currency, makes you want to share anything that you learn, like that right there. I knew that, so it makes my ego feel good to share it. But just makes you feel like proud of yourself. It makes you feel, valuable, like you have good information. So write that down and start to make decisions based on that in your life. It's really a beautiful thing. And you'll also realize that, the classic saying, buying things generally is not what makes you feel happy. Experiences, people make you feel happy. Something that I heard in that same podcast actually was talking about the happiness flow chart. And it talked about kind of like a 3-step phase that maybe some analytical people, engineers, type A, entrepreneurs, might be able to utilize this. And this happiness flow chart is a 3-step process that you can do whenever you feel a negative emotion. Not a negative emotion, whenever you feel unhappy. I'll say that. The first is the thing that made you unhappy true? Or is it not? If it's something you're guessing is going to happen in the future, it is not true yet. If it's just something that, you don't have all the facts about, it is not true. So if so, that is a sign to try to redirect your emotions. It's going to be very hard in the beginning, but it's a new muscle we're building. Okay, cool. It's true, right? The second example is, can I do something about it? This is where I'm about to lose half the audience, but let's look at like the pandemic. There's nothing that you can do about the greater situation, right? Of course, you could do things about, your health, you could do things about people around you, but if there's nothing that you can do about the greater situation or are willing to do, because a lot of people could do things but weren't willing to sacrifice that much time, energy, and money, then it's not something that should upset you, right? So is it true, and can I do something about it? If not, you gotta let it go. It's like, for example, global warming. I live in the outdoors. This is something that really means a lot to me. I think is very, very important, potentially more important than the work I'm doing, but it's not my personal problem to solve. It's not it's not in my dharma. It's not why I'm here on this planet. So I will do my responsibility as a civilian to shop, and recycle and do things in a way that's good for the environment. But it is really not something I can do anything about or am willing to do something about that's going to make a difference outside of, what I'm going to focus on. So if it's true, you move to the next one. Can you do something about it? And maybe the answer is yes, right? Then, okay, do something about it. If the answer is no, that's when you move to the next one again. And it's, despite its presence, can I accept that this happened? And acceptance is the last stage of grieving. And again, these are difficult things, but you need to practice them. And the good thing is, we get pissed off a lot. So like we can practice them on some small things. But can you accept certain things that happen? And what does that look like? The example they used in this podcast was the gentleman's son died. And his son actually wrote books about happiness. And he started going through his son's journals and writing books about happiness to continue to spread his message. He accepted his son's death and said, what can I do about it? And boom, acted on it, right? And that made him feel good and happy. So I personally love that happiness flow chart. I've intuitively kind of came to the can I do something about it before. I've just realized that, again, quoting Tim Ferriss about the low information diet, like I try to just stay away from things that I can't really affect, right, or aren't going to directly affect me. One thing that I wanted to dive into as far as my own experience was coaching. So I actually recently hired a coach, Tony Benici, The Dojo. Check out his book, The Dojo, if you want to give it a whirl. He's a great coach. life, business, relationships, health. He kind of covers it all. I would say he focuses on spirituality. And what I've realized with coaching is, yes, he teaches me things, but more than that, he holds me accountable for sitting with tough questions. That is something that we all have accessible to us. And again, if you're looking to make changes in your life, I would really recommend setting time aside to sit with difficult questions. Important questions. They don't have to be difficult. But what I mean by that is take a walk without your cell phone and think about a question. Meditate. I like journaling, recording content like this. It allows me to not make logical jumps and actually connect the dots when I'm communicating about something. But sit with these questions and you'll be amazed at how much of your life you can redirect attention where you want it to be. And this doesn't always have to be so deep, but it really trains your brain to think. And this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I think Earl Nightingale said a long time ago that man simply does not think. I think he was right. He was right. It's something that as we grow older, we lose our awe, right? You hear all the time about how babies are actually, like the ideal, like the role model for living in the moment, being happy. It's like everything is all to them. Like when they, pick up a glass of water, it's like clear and the liquid's moving and they're so enamored by it. And we start to name things. That's a glass of water, that's a cell phone, whatever. I think sitting with these hard questions actually gets us to think and be a little more creative. The purpose of the Happiness Discipline podcast, especially these solo episodes, is to give a little more depth on specific topics. I really want to be able to share one person's opinion. I'm also going to use it as a tool, honestly, an accountability tool to learn something new every week and share it with you. So these will be coming out once a week. My goal is to help 100 million people be happier. So if you could share this with someone, if you could like this, if you're listening to it on Apple, Spotify, like it, share it like that, follow the page. That stuff means a lot. That pushes it out even further. But ultimately, what I want to do is also touch lives on a more intimate basis. So please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or on my website. You can, find my email on there. It's Sean, SEAN, at sgreenspanconsulting.com. I would love to hear from you, topics I want to cover. If you want to come on the podcast, I'm not some exclusive podcast. I want to help as many people as possible. Come on. I'd love to have deep conversations with you. Would love prompts on topics, books to read, podcasts to listen to, articles, white papers to go through. And ultimately, I'd love to hear about your experience as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. There'll be a next one coming out next week. Thank you, and be happy.